Hello boys and girls, welcome to Mrs. Bandu's Math Movies. This is Lesson 6-5 for Course 2, Solving Percent Problems Using Proportions. And that is our objective, to use proportions to solve problems involving percent. Okay, before we even get started, I'm just going to write the general format. Basically, part over whole is 1 ratio equals the percent over 100. Okay, so part over whole equals percent over 100. These are the pieces that we use in the proportions, or the ratios that form our proportions, and so that's just a helpful thing to keep in mind as we go. Let me get this a little better centered for you. There we go. Okay, so it asks us what percent of 25 is 5. So again, basically when I look here, the part is 5, the whole is 25, and I'm looking for the percent, so that's why I have the n over 100. Okay, so if I solve my proportion here, this gives me 20%. We will go ahead, we will be looking in more detail at this, but this is just showing you what you're doing here. You would do 5 times 100, and then divide by 25. That gives you 20 over 100. So your percent is 20%. Finding a part. Well, truly n is 20, which then tells you, sorry, I have to be right here, that the percent is 20%. Okay. Finding a part. What is 20% of 25? So, first of all, if I'm trying to figure out what the part is, usually the whole is going to follow the word of, so that's telling you that the 25 needs to go on the bottom there, and then 20% is 20 over 100 from our definition of percent. Okay, so again, solving cross products, 25 times 20 divided by 100 gives me n, which in this case is 5. That's my final answer. So basically it tells me that 5 is 20% of 25. Okay, finding a whole. 20% of what is 5? Okay, so this time of is followed by the missing number. So the missing number is on the bottom. The part that we're talking about is 5, and our percent is 20 out of 100 again. So 5 times 100 divided by 20 gives me 25. We will work these out in a little more detail. Again, I would not try to memorize where all of this falls, other than if you know part over whole equals percent over 100, and we're going to talk about some clue words that we can use to help you figure out how things should fall into place. Okay? First of all, finding a percent. So let's look at some examples. What percent of is a crucial word, 150 is 45. So basically, first of all, I know that my percent is missing. So I'm going to go over here. N, percent is always out of 100, so that gives me n over 100. Now, what percent of 150 is 45? Of precedes, comes before the description of the whole. In this case, it's 150. So 45 over 150 equals n over 100. Find your cross product, so that's going to be 150 times n and 45 times 100. So 150n equals 4,500. And if you actually want to line through that and write 4500, that makes a little more sense to me. Then, after that, we're going to divide each side by 150 to solve for n. So n equals 30. So 45 is 30% of 150. So again, this is a case where n is 30, but the answer to the question is actually 30%. So be sure that you answer the question correctly. So this is like the appropriate label, so to speak. Here's one for you to try. And again, we're working on doing these with proportions, so you must use a proportion. Remember, a proportion is a statement that two ratios are equivalent. That from a previous chapter this year. Okay, so here is finding a part. And again, I don't worry so much of, am I finding the part or the whole or whatever, just fill in the pieces. So again, remember, it's part over whole, and then percent over 100. I almost always fill in my percent first because that's the easiest thing to identify. Either I know it or I don't. So I have 24 over 100 for percent. And then I look for the word of. 24% of 25. So that means 25 is my whole and my missing number is the part. So n over 25, part over whole, equals percent over 100. Go ahead and, in this case, it simplified the fraction, which you don't have to do, but it's another avenue that you can take. So 6 over 25 equals n over 25. Okay. Now, when you simplify this, it becomes like a no-brainer, because here, if this is 25 on the bottom and this is 25, then n has to be 6. You don't really even need to do algebra on that. You can use mental math or math sense, number sense, to figure that out. If you weren't sure if that was going to work, you can work out your cross products, 25 times 6, and which is 150, and n times 25, which is 25n, and then divide each side by 25. So n is 6, in case you weren't sure if that worked out. It sure does. And finally, our third example is finding the whole. Use a proportion to answer the question. 117 is 45% of what number? So 117 is the part, the what number is the whole, and of course 45%. So here we don't know the whole, so we're putting an n, and of course if I'm talking about the whole bar, it's 100%. So the model's showing that relationship. So 117 is 45% of what number? So the part is 117, the whole is n, so I'm going to put an n, and the percent is 45 over 100. This is just information I'm pulling out of the chart as well, if you want to look at the model. Okay, I'm going to do my cross products. When I do that, I get 45n equals 17 times 100, which again is 117 times 100. So that's 117,000. Okay? And then you're going to, I'm sorry, I said 117,000, 11,700. I miswrote and misspoke. Okay, so again, that's 11,700. Okay. And again, here I'm going to write the 11,700. And divide each side by 45. N is 260. So 117 is 45% of what number? 117 is 45% of 260. Okay, remember you can always check these out as well just by putting it into an equation like you know and checking it. We are looking at using the proportion on this, so in this particular section you must do them with proportions because we need to have more than one way to do these. The following section we'll do with equations, and you'll be required to do them with equations then. On the test you'll have some leeway, but I will ask probably that you show me at least one or two with a proportion and one or two with an equation. Okay, please finish the quick checks and have those ready for the next time we meet in class. Please, please, please remember to